all anime adaptations are bad. Well, that's what I would say if I was downright stupid. You know what? Maybe there is a bit of truth to what I just said. I mean, some adaptations are pretty damn bad. I'm thinking Tokyo Ghoul first and foremost, but on the other end, you've got absolutely beautiful adaptations like AOT and the Monogatari series. Please don't come for me, Monogatari fans. I know they didn't adapt everything word for word, but it's pretty unrealistic to expect that. And I'm a fan of the series myself, so I would know. Basically, what I'm trying to say is most adaptations are just okay. Not terrible, not particularly good, and that right there sums up the anime adaptation of the light novel The Tunnel to Summer, The Exit of Goodbyes by Mei Hachimoku. Now, before we begin, if you want to experience the story in its fullest, most complete form, I strongly advise reading the light novel. Do not watch the movie, or at least read the novel first before checking out the movie for some sort of visual representation of the story. Now, don't worry, I'll explain exactly why it's worth it. Oh, and I'll be using clips from the movie to review the light novel, as you can obviously see. The Turn to Summer is essentially a story of cost. This basic premise is pretty simple. Koharu Tono lives in a small rural town with his father. He's haunted by the death of his younger sister, Karen Tono, whose death caused his home to completely fall apart, leading to his mom leaving his dad and his dad becoming a drunk and abusive person towards him. One night, after having a fight with his father, he leaves the house for a stroll and stumbles upon the Urashima Tunnel and somewhat discovers its abilities. Before I continue, massive spoiler warning for the light novel, though I think even with spoilers, you're good since the story doesn't really rely on shock to get its intended message across. The anime adaptation doesn't do the story justice, like at all. I mean, the movie is only what, 1 hour 23 minutes, and so much was cut out. I'm talking entire characters, plot lines, a lot of crucial nuance just wiped out from the story. A miniseries of 7 or 8 episodes would have done this story justice. Even after all that, though, it was still sort of serviceable. Now, the line of fans will tell you it's absolutely terrible, but why the novel is definitely superior. The movie isn't downright bad. They did what they could with the limited runtime they had, and I perfectly understand that, but I don't approve of it still. Now, with the characters, May has a couple of hits and misses. Koharu Tono is a guilt-stricken young lad, mainly suffering from the guilt of his sister's death, like I mentioned earlier. He believes if he hadn't facilitated Karen climbing onto that tree or not even condoned the idea of it in the first place, she would still be alive today. And frankly speaking, he is right. As much as I don't want to, rub salt on the wound, factually, that's true. If he hadn't helped Karen climb up that tree, she would still be alive, but I digress. That guilt basically defines his whole personality. He lives every day in some sort of self inflicted loathing as a form of repentance for what he did. He is even willing to go as far as exchanging his own life for Karen's if need be. That would, to him, return everything back to how it was, back to when Karen was the glue that held their family together. Such a fragile family, if I might add. Their home completely shattering to the mess it is today is all the proof you need. And of course, Tono being the product of an affair doesn't remotely help. That part was cut out of the movie. But yes, Tono's mother had an affair with another man during her marriage, which led to Tono being born. You can see my boy wasn't really set up for a happy life to begin with. It explains part of his father's behavior towards him after Karen's passing, and for some despicable reason, his mother, who was responsible for making him an illegitimate child, decided to conveniently leave her husband after the tragedy that took Karen away. If you don't at least dislike the mother yet, there's more. In chapter 4, I hope I'm remembering that correctly, Tono, Anzu, and Kawasaki decided to go hang out together at the summer firework festival. Tono was just tagging along because Anzu wanted him there, by the way. So they have fun, they go up to the stands, they play some games, they eat some food, and they watch the fireworks. And while Tono is walking around, he spots a familiar figure and has a hunch. As anyone would, he decides to follow that figure to see if anything will come out of it. And lo and behold, it turned out to be his mother, with none other than, you probably guessed it, her new husband. That in and of itself had me feeling a little iffy in a way, but let's look past it. So he realizes she's his mom and he's just standing there watching her and her husband, contemplating whether or not he should approach her. Suddenly she turns around and sees Tono. The look of pure, unfiltered disgust she had on her face after setting her side on Tono had me raging to the point that I had to step away from this story for a bit. How could a mother of all people, look at her own child as if she had just seen a ghost? She wanted absolutely nothing to do with him after playing a key part in placing him in that current situation, but rather saw him as some sort of dark version or dark spot in her past that she's just trying to forget. I mean, Tono probably had hoped that his mother was the one responsible adult he could salvage some love from. But of course, that wasn't the case. That moment just completely broke my boy. But as a silver lining, if you can even call it that, while on the verge of tears, he finds Hanashiro somewhere close by. He clings to her and cries his heart out. I just love this moment because Anzo's reaction couldn't have been any better. She just let him cry and empty the entirety of his tragedy in peace. This moment of vulnerability also improved our relationship, having them become much closer on a much more intimate level. Plus, this was the first time while reading that I felt May's amazing ability to execute emotional climaxes properly. After that, I was sure that the conclusion was in safe hands. Well, nothing spells deep in this novel better than Tono's encounter with Karen in the Urashima tunnel. That whole interaction towards the end, when he was about to leave, trying to bring Karen along with him, is a climax of his arc, some of which important parts, I tell you, were cut from the movie. Karen, in essence, opens Sono's eyes and sort of forces him to accept the inevitability of her return from death. The accident was a tragedy, I know, but that is what it will remain. That is what it will always be, and he cannot keep living in the past. Now, this is obviously very difficult for him to just accept and let go, something he's been drowning in for years on end, something which has defined his personality and way of life for said years. But because it's coming from Karen, he's at least willing to listen to her. Karen practically gives him the permission to move on, to love, which is something he had sort of banned himself from doing as a result of his own guilt. He self-inflicts a punishment for his sin. When I said practically, I meant it. Karen writes the words love permit on a sheet of paper and hands it over to Tono. This serves as a symbol of her forgiveness and a wish for her dearest brother to pursue his love interest Anzu and to find happiness in his life. This is where Tono is finally able to accept his grief for his sister but be able to live with it while moving on in life as she wished him to. His self-inflicted punishment of not being allowed to love is finally, after a very long time, lifted. Now, before I get into Anzu, I'll be upfront. Her section is going to be noticeably shorter than Tono's, and that's not me slacking, it's just Mei. This is Tono's story, it's his POV, his internal monologues carrying the whole novel. Anzu gets her moments, but Mei doesn't give her nearly the same depth of exploration, which is honestly one of my few critiques of the novel. Anyway, when it comes to perception of itself, Tono and Anzu are two completely different beings. Well, maybe not completely different, but somewhat different. Anzu is defined by their desire to be special, their desire to leave a mark on the world, to be remembered tens of years after her death, unlike the rest of the world's billions of, in her perspective, insignificant people. This desperate longing for remembrance stems from her grandfather's death, as she explains. After Hanashiro's grandpa dies and his funeral was held, according to her, being careful here, he was merely forgotten a few weeks later. This made her realize that without some massive contribution to the world, some global impact, without leaving a significant mark on humanity's very soul, you will inevitably be forgotten completely, and for some reason, we weren't really told why, that scared her. She believes once in a lifetime experiences, special events are worth much more than anything else, and her means to an end for that dream of hers is becoming a mangaka. Now, her parents are against this, which is why she moved into the town in the first place. This part is also cut from the movie, or just glossed over, I can't even remember. But her parents want her to pursue a traditional path, school, uni, then become a doctor or something like that. And her interest in manga counters that goal of theirs. They even go as far as throwing away her drawings, stuff that she spent months on. By the way, the pieces of paper she found in the tunnel the first time her and Tono went into it were drawings that her parents trashed. They sent her to the town to live with her aunts and sort of cool off and supposedly get back into the right state of mind. But of course, Anzo is nowhere near that simple. She has this very strong, steadfast, I don't give a shit personality, which I really like. I mean, it's on display by the way she behaves on her first day of school after moving in, especially towards Kawasaki. But Anzu has set values and principles and boundaries that she firmly sticks to, and of course punches the shit out of you when you cross them. It's also because of that very foundationally strong personality that she can stand up to her parents and walk her own path. That desire to be special likewise makes her not want to associate with ordinary average Joe people. What Hanashiro wants from the tunnel is the talent to become a great mangaka. It means to be unordinary, but as we later find out, she doesn't realize she already has that. Her relationship with Tono isn't only born from the shared circuit of the Urashima tunnel, but also because Anzu sees him as unordinary. He makes a very specific comment about parents in the early part of the novel. Forgive me for not being able to remember what chapter, which sort of piqued her interest and subsequently led to his classification in her book as a weirdo. When she said she didn't have parents, she was obviously lying in that instance. Tono said, and I quote, "Lucky you." That right there was the start of their relationship. What the novel gives us that the movie doesn't is her life after he's gone, how she still loves him, how it affects her mentally, how she keeps writing letters to him and sending them into the tunnel. But as much as I love that relationship and that romanticized, undying love, I feel as though her moving on with another guy would have brought a lot more bittersweet realism to the story, which is what May had been setting up the groundwork for. But hey, I like what I got, it still works. The one thing I genuinely can't explain is why they changed the time dilation mechanics in the movie. The novel version just hits differently. I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to spend too much time on the logistics. Speaking of the tunnel, there's a lot more to it than just the supernatural factor. It's a vessel, and the science behind it doesn't have to make sense, not in this type of story. It serves as a reminder that any and every wish has to be exchanged for an equally sizable price. Tonal Trade is present for a shot at the past, which, as we've learned, wasn't very rewarding. Furthermore, the tunnel represents two different things to each of them. For Anzu, a shortcut to get what she wants, to be great, to be remembered in history. For Tono, a bit of escapism, also a means to elevate his guilt for his sister's death, a cheat code to get something lost. Neither of them gets that from the tunnel, and that right there is the bitter realism of the story on display once again. You remember that bully, the one Anzu punched, Kawasaki? Yeah, May gives her own subplot in the novel, which the movie cuts. Honestly, I get why they cut it out. It wasn't really fleshed out enough to justify the runtime, and to me, it's just wasted potential. Moving on. At least May doesn't fumble twice in the same story. If not, I wouldn't have loved the ending as much as I did. It was a deserved happy ending, not one of those Deus Ex Machina endings where everything is just reset back to normal. Both Anzo and Tono had to live with the consequences of their actions. They never magically got back all the years they lost into that tunnel, chasing love and unrealistic wishes. The story honors the meaning of sacrifice and the concept of fair exchange, which is very rare to find nowadays. When I watched the movie, I genuinely loved it. It wasn't perfect, but it was special to me. An 8.5 out of 10 to be exact. Going into the novel, my expected rating was an 8.7. I expected and knew it would be better based on everything I'd heard prior to starting, but you guys understated how good this light novel was. My overall rating for the story at this point in time is an 8.9 out of 10. I highly recommend it to anyone. This story is in my top 30 anime of all time. I'm not saying we have the same taste or resonate with the same things, but it is at least enjoyable and bittersweet to that level. This was Mei Hachimoku's debut novel, and my god, what a first it was. With that in mind, even if you don't end up liking it as much as I did, be understanding it's his first work. If you don't know, The Turn to Summer is the first of a four-part anthology following the four seasons: summer, autumn, winter, and spring. They're all set in the same universe, something the author recently confirmed, but are all separate stories. I intend to read the remaining three. The Turn to Summer is an amazing story. Sure, it has inconsistencies here and there, but that's to be expected of an author's first work. Despite that, May still manages to entrance you in his story and get his intended message across without the need to be pretentious or do too much. Like I said earlier in the video, this is a story of cost, and I believe it perfectly encapsulates that in the entirety of its duration. For your own good, read this light novel.